Hello everybody and welcome to today's briefing around the Worker Protection Act. My name is Carly and I'm the consultant who's going to be working through this briefing for staff within the corporate or private sector today. So let's start first by exploring the legal framework and what this area of legislation is relative to. Now, the Worker Protection Act was something that came into force on the 26th of October 2023. And it aligns to ensuring that our workspaces and places are free from harm to all employees. And the specific type of harm focused within this legislation is the area around sexual misconduct or sexual harassment. Now, the Worker Protection Act isn't the only piece of legislation which outlines this form of behaviour and to raise awareness that it shouldn't happen within the context of our workspaces. It was previously referenced in Section 26 of our Equalities Act of 2010. The Equalities Act, however, just provided more of a neutral statement for us around what sexual harassment is and suggested it shouldn't be happening for employees through the course of their professional conduct. The Worker Protection Act, however, extends beyond this narrative and now outlines that all employers should take reasonable steps and have a role to play in the prevention of employees experience this type of risk within the workplace. And it phrases that in terms of the employer now has a legal duty to make reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment. And as much as this being, of course, now a new requirement, an active role on behalf of employers, regardless of size or sector, it also ensures what actions and outcomes could take place should it reach employment tribunal and an employer perceived to have breached their reasonable steps duty. They would be in the position where they could be instructed to have to award up to 25% uplift compensatory award for employees affected. Hopefully, therefore, a very stringent response and reaction, not just in terms of the organisation, but in terms of the overarching area that we really want to make sure workplaces and spaces feel safe for just about everybody. So let's consider then, what are possible acts of sexual misconduct and sexual harassment? Now, the Equality and Human Rights Commission has actually provided for employers a guidance document, a document outlining lots of different behaviours in a very clear and tangible way, which they can use to raise awareness and inform policies to guide us around what is and what isn't acceptable behaviours, particularly under this area of risk of sexual harassment and misconduct. As the examples here on the screen help to convey, it could be through physical interactions or contact, but it could also be verbal as well. Things such as suggestive comments, lewd or derogatory language, sharing of intimate content or details, again, perhaps with the action and outcome of alarming people, causing them distress, or just making the work environment a sexualized, hostile, or uncomfortable one. So with this act very much now being in place, very much with clarity around the role all employers should take, where do we start? So particularly if you are joining us today on this briefing as a chief executive of an organisation, a director holding that lead, senior or manager role within your sector, within your organisation, it's really important to start with a needs analysis. Conducting your spot check, your audit around what is the current process in your organisation and highlighting possible weak spots or areas to develop and evolve to make sure it aligns with best practice and that we're acting compliantly as outlined from this legislation. So ultimately, it starts with knowing your staff demographic. Now, within the private sector, we need to extend that beyond our employees employed full-time or part-time within our organisation, but also our partners, contractors, clients even that our employees engage with. Are we very clear and assured around the nature of the work, and where possible concerns of this nature may arise or be heightened. So it's very much knowing your staffing teams and demographic, who for their needs or part of their roles may be at greater risk or susceptible of this type of behaviour taking place, and what could we have in terms of mitigating those risks or concerns. Equally, what are the environmental considerations that we need to adhere to also? Not just in terms of our duty within our building, within our working space, but any corporate events, any networking or social opportunities which employees may be part of as part of the course of their role, equally ensuring that those spaces aren't also areas where they could possibly be affected by this concern. Are all our employees, partners, contractors, freelancers, anyone who engages with our organisation, very clear around how we expect their behaviour and conduct to be? So the staff code of conduct, very important we share that with people we collaborate with, that we partner work with, but also our employees who have real clarity around the do's and the do nots, that we provide them very clear and tangible examples of misconduct, so they have that framework in which to adhere to. And then most importantly, what are our reporting mechanisms and systems? Who and how do individuals report if they become involved in a concern or perhaps witness a concern throughout the course of their conduct? What are the systems? What are the ways and means where they can feel they share a concern and it will be taken seriously? And it's all of these areas that naturally may evolve out of doing that spot check, doing that audit, that needs analysis, which could then inform what your organisation's reasonable steps look like. Because of course, what is thought to be reasonable in terms of the legislation and guidance associated is very much nuanced and bespoke to the nature of the organisation itself. Its size, the sector, the working environments and spaces of your employees, and of course, capacity and resources too. Larger organisations with an element of HR or people management departments might naturally suit within that capacity. For smaller organisations within the private sector, it might be the chief exec, the director who take on those responding to responsibilities. So it's going to be based on what your organisation is, the nuances and specificity within that. But regardless of its shape or size, no employer from any sector is exempt. Regardless of the industry we work within, regardless of our staffing nature or type, every employer within the country now has to adhere to this legislative duty, those reasonable steps. And most importantly, it's about, once again, creating safe environments. If staff feel safe, they're far more likely to be productive. So this shouldn't be seen merely as a tick box related activity. Lots of reflective areas here on our screen attribute to areas where we could evolve and develop, particularly within our sector, to ensure not only we're compliant, but we are providing that safe and supportive working environment for everyone. It links to overarching aspects such as your culture in your organisation. How do we make sure that it's very much informed right the way through every level of role and responsibility? How do we define or influence the working culture and set the tone for expectations around behaviour and workplace civility? That we are proactive at reviewing what's already in place to guide and inform our staff, the scaffolding of their practice within your policies and procedures, making sure we look to add and evolve areas of consideration aligned to this risk and need, particularly in code of conduct procedures. Raising awareness, training, development, making sure that all staff have very clear understandings of what is and what is not acceptable, particularly in terms of their own behaviours and interactions. And then lending itself back to that audit, that needs analysis, risk assessments that might naturally evolve out of that to mitigate any possible risks that could align as part of that organisational system. And reporting channels and investigation. It's really important that all staff clearly understand and have access to someone who to report. They feel those reports will be taken seriously, and they're also informed around things like timescales, interventions, outcomes that might be on the back of investigations. It's all of these things that we can all do to make sure our workplace and spaces are not only productive, but safe for all our employees. If today is the first moment you've engaged with this legislation and you're thinking, actually, perhaps we need to get involved, start systems, start processes, start evolving our offer to staff in terms of training and development, we here at ECP Safeguarding are very much to support you with your onward journey. We have lots of great resources in this space. We have podcasts with HR specialists. We have guidance policies. We're all over social media. And we also are developing a very bespoke element of our training, consultancy and auditing for organisations within the private or corporate sector. So please do get in touch with us. Check out our landing page, our social media, or drop us in an email for a free consultation at info@ecpsafeguarding.co.uk. Thank you so much for joining me on this briefing here today. We hope to work with you again in the near future. Take care, everybody.